Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show we have Kanishk Mehta. He leads products at Quantiphi, and especially in the generative AI space. So welcome, Kanish.
Thanks, John. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's talk about. You have 11 years of experience in this. You've been building this stuff out. How long have you been doing AI stuff?
Um, Seems like forever, but I would
Hmm.
say somewhere around 2016, 17 is where we started moving from statistical models and the traditional machine learning kind of stuff into more of the AI space. Initially, I was. And I guess the entire space was more focused on models that were specific to a particular task, and then now we're slowly moving towards that space where um, you know we're building models, or we're using models that can perform generalized tasks, and yeah, that's generally been the journey.
So the product you're working on now is called Baioniq. Why don't you tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that?
Sure. So Baioniq is our generative AI platform. It's built and designed by us ground up. It's been designed to help improve the productivity of knowledge workers in the enterprise. And there are multiple tasks that Bionic performs, including the out-of-the-box retriever augmented generation kind of task, up to work automation and task automation as such. So that's Bionic overall. It connects with various enterprise source systems. Users can choose from a variety of foundation models. They can choose models like frontier models like Gemini, Claude, or GPT, or even third-party models and open models like Llama, Gemma, Mixtral, DBRX. And these can be fine-tuned to understand the specific language of a customer's business and automate a wide range of tasks. Yeah.
Okay. So what have you found that the average knowledge worker needs when it comes to generative AI? What are some of the tools that you guys built out for Bionic?
Sure. So when it comes to knowledge work, at the end of the day, there are a couple of scenarios, right? Um, I would say the most common scenario that we come across with customers is they want something like a Gemini or a Chat GPT, but for the enterprise. What that means is a generative AI platform that can help answer questions, that can help perform tasks, make them do things faster. But at the same time, it should be grounded in their knowledge, right? So they don't want all the information from the internet to be, the source of, the information that it's synthesizing. They want the information to come from their data. So for example, there are lots of customers that in today's date use systems like Google Workspace or SharePoint, Confluence, etc. And they want the solution or these generative AI platforms to be able to answer questions, perform tasks on that data. That's probably the most common use case. There are a couple more use cases I would say that knowledge workers find relevant, or our customers generally have asked for. One of them is um, software development, and specifically code generation, right? So code generation, code conversion, and code explanation, right? That's another use case that we found pretty relevant. And then there's a third scenario where customers have wanted basically workflow specific automations. Like, for example, we're working with a number of customers who have legal departments, and those legal departments deal with redlining contracts day in and day out. They deal with contract summarization. They deal with contract comparison. And so we've built this platform to not only be, just an assistant to knowledge workers, but also automate tasks like that, right? So there's a workflow automation tooling built into Bionic for contract redlining, right? So for legal teams, Bionic can actually automatically ingest contracts, redline contracts, hand over the final decision to lawyers or paralegals to decide whether clauses need to be added, removed, or modified. And then finally, we also have an integration with DocuSign. So it sends the red line contract to the party that needs to sign it or needs to review it further. So yeah, I mean, these are the kind of workflows, or these are the kind of requirements that we've seen knowledge workers have, and specifically the organizations that we work with, um, you know, trying to solve these kind of problems.
That's actually interesting. The idea that that this thing can actually redline contracts and redlining in terms of things that aren't quite to policy, or what's the input versus the output on this on the legal aspect.
That's a great question. So every organization has their own standard operating procedures, has their own body of knowledge, so to speak, that they follow when it comes to redlining contracts. What Bionic does is it basically ingests around 30 to 35 executed contracts depending upon the types of contracts. There may be multiple types of contracts that organizations use, but Bionic will ingest about 30 to 35 executed contracts and about 30 to 35 rejected contracts, and based on that it creates a guidebook. And that guidebook basically has the terms and terminologies and the language that is approved by the organization, and that needs to be included in the contract. And so what it does is, post that, whenever you upload a contract into Bionic, it'll identify three things. One, language that needs to be added. Two, language that needs to be modified. And the third is language that needs to be removed. Right. And accordingly, it will make those particular red lines in the contract and then hand it over to the assigned legal counsel. Along with that, what it also does is it highlights all the language that is present. So according to guidelines, there will be certain language that should definitely be present in the contract. So it'll highlight all of that language, and it'll also make sure that it creates sort of a checklist. So the legal counsel can then go through all the language that is already present, that is as per their best practices. And then when they go through the suggestions made by the platform, they can either accept or reject those suggestions. If they reject it, they give some feedback. That feedback then goes back into the reinforcement learning with human feedback module. And that particular module is basically consists of a ranking model. And what that does is, it takes that feedback along with um, a classification model of identifying good feedback versus unusable feedback. It uses the good feedback and then finally fine tunes the model, and that fine tuning frequency is something that can be decided based on the requirement of the customer, or based on the kind of data that they're generally using and the kind of models that they're using. So yeah, that's I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty in depth. Cool.
Yeah.
And you guys are using agents, AI agents, to do this stuff.
Yeah, so we also have introduced agentic workflows and skills more recently. We kind of approach agents and agentic workflows slightly differently in our platform. Agents are made of atomic units that we call skills. And a skill is almost like a rule engine. So you can think of an agent as an intern who probably joins your team, and you guide them maybe to develop the skill of writing minutes of the meetings, right? And maybe later you also mentor them to draft hyper personalized interview questionnaires, and sometime later you may even guide them to send out emails to your customers and prospects about interviews that you've conducted and case studies and things of that nature, right? So these are all individual skills, but all of them come together in the form of an agent. And you can create an agent like that in Bionic that performs these skills, and it'll always make sure that it runs the last mile, or the final decision. It runs it by you, so that you can either review it or correct it or give it just feedback in natural language. And every time you give it feedback in natural language, it understands that, it makes changes in the atomic units in the skills. And those skills are basically, like I mentioned, they're like rule engines that have directional acyclic graphs that are kind of built in. And so every time that you give it feedback, it'll make changes to the graph that it uses to make these decisions and perform these tasks.
The In terms of building these things out, what was the
Mhm.
timeline for this? Obviously, you used statistical analysis before. You used sort of like kind of, I guess you would use machine learning neural networks to a
Mhm.
degree up until now.
Mhm.
But how fast did it take to get Quantify from the old methods to something that's a little bit more familiar to us, like within the last couple, like 6 months, let's say?
Sure. So if you look at the journey that's kind of led us to building Bionic, We launched Baioniq in on March 21st, 2023, during NVIDIA GTC, and what got us there was there was actually the previous year, that's 2022. There was an executive briefing, or a meeting between Jensen and our co-founder Asif, and Asif conceptualized, after that meeting, a generative AI platform specifically tailored for enterprises. So it from November 2022 to March 2023 is what got us, is how quickly we actually
Hmm.
ideated, developed, built out, and deployed our platform. In March, or at the end of March, we had our first customer, and that was more of early access. And then we went into general availability sometime in, I would say, at the end of May, right?
So it was
So that's
fast.
how quickly we kind of moved,
Yeah.
yeah, in order to get this out there. Yeah.
Okay. Why can't I just use standard ChatGPT to do this kind of things? What are you guys doing? What's the special sauce that you're adding to the experience?
Sure. So there are a couple of things. You can, technically, you can use ChatGPT as a personal assistant, as from a more of a consumer point of view, right? But when it comes to enterprises and organizations, from a technical standpoint, organizations commonly encounter like four main challenges. The first one is hallucinations, and this is probably the most well-known issue. Commercial models that are out there tend, or have a tendency to hallucinate at certain points in time, specifically also because they don't understand the domain knowledge, or they may not be trained on the knowledge, or the language of that particular domain that a customer is dealing with, right? For example, you can ask a model that's out there, or you can even use like a llama 3 or something to write a poem, or a limerick or something of that sort. But if you ask it to design and create like a clinical trial protocol, it may not be able to do that because it doesn't know the standards or the operating procedures that you follow in your organization to create that clinical trial protocol, right? So, and in certain scenarios, when you do that, some of these models end up hallucinating. So hallucinations is one of the major issues that we overcome in Baioniq. The second is retrieving accurate information. So when it comes to deploying the solution in enterprises, um, a lot of enterprises, have multiple systems that they are using in order to store data, manage content, manage documents, etc. Right? I mentioned SharePoint, I mentioned Confluence. There are multiple such systems. There may be on-premise servers. There'll be other systems like Google Workspace, etc. And in order for you to integrate with each of these, if you were to try and do it yourself, you would have to actually build that connector. We have connectors out of the box that allow you to integrate with these systems. The third aspect, which is like extremely important to us, and that's one of the reasons we've designed our platform this way, is data security, right? So our platform Baioniq gets deployed within the client's tenant. It gets deployed behind their firewall, in their cloud, or on their servers, right? So neither the data nor the models reside in our servers or in our environment. Um, the principle is your data is your data, your models are your model, right? So when we deploy the solution, we also ensure that besides guard railing, we are actually deploying it behind the customer's firewall, right? So we do provide over the air updates, security patches, etc., but everything stays within the client's environment.
Okay.
Another aspect is product grade scaling challenges. So once the system starts providing like accurate and fact based responses, its usage can increase dramatically. And running inference on language models with billions of parameters is resource intensive. So although some customers may end up using frontier models, even those models have some quota limits, right? So it requires computational power, memory, but it also requires a very efficient design that can have queuing mechanisms built in, that can have the ability to switch between models depending upon the type of task that needs to be performed. And all of these are kind of key challenges that our customers face, and that's how these are the challenges that we've designed Bionic to overcome. I hope I answered your question. I know I
Yeah,
went
that
on for
was no,
quite a
no,
while, but
no.
yeah.
That's deep. That's deep. what kind of manpower did you throw at this job? Because it sounds like you have a lot of stuff out of the box, which is fairly unusual for a company.
Yeah.
Uh, sounds like you had a pretty big team on this.
Yeah. So we did have a pretty big team on this. Um, this was the need of the hour, right? Back in November. So we actually, let me take a step back. We've been in the AI and ML and data and cloud space since
Hmm.
the year of our inception, right? So since 2013, we've been working in this space. We've been building natural language processing solutions. We've been in the conversational AI space for quite a bit of time. We've had solutions that we've built out for customers that have been in production for a while. In November 2022, all of this changed, right? We went from the traditional conversational AI intent and entity based kind of systems to generative solutions, right? In order to be able to perform tasks or automate certain workflows. And this was all with the launch of ChatGPT and other language models. This kind of took off. And from that point onwards, we put a team together to kind of solve this problem for us and build this platform. It took it took a lot of people, right? So on our side, we had our entire applied research team, our research team that actually works on multiple of these aspects. They had already been working on knowledge synthesis and retrieval, and we have a couple of papers published and a couple of patents in the space of knowledge retrieval through knowledge graphs and subgraph retrieval of information and factual evidence, right? So that helped us, or that gave us the foundation. And on top of that, we put together a team that consisted of app developers, that consisted of machine learning engineers, software developers, etc., who came together to kind of put this platform together. I would say it was roughly a team of about 60 odd people, but they were all across various practices and streams that were working in Quantiphi. Everybody came together, and that's how the solution took its first steps, and that's how we ended up building this platform. So yeah, it was a huge collaborative effort that
Hmm.
involved people from various streams who came together to make this possible.
Yeah, but it's interesting
Um,
to hear that you guys have been building on this for I guess almost a decade before
yeah,
all this, like all the fancy stuff came out, right? So
yeah,
I think there
absolutely.
was I think there was before and after ChatGPT. There's early it was data science, it was machine learning, it was statistics, and now it's just like, oh, I just want to have a chatbot that says hello to me in the morning
Yeah.
and can write some Pascal code for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are still some scenarios where traditional machine learning and um, statistical algorithms actually are preferred, because they can actually, in some scenarios, use lesser compute and do the work faster. So I wouldn't say that generative AI is like something that's applicable everywhere, and that's something our customers are slowly realizing. And what's ending up happening is that with Baioniq and with the solutions that we're building, we also have built in a capability to do things like function calling, and that's where that kind of comes in, right? It's where generative AI and the traditional AI kind of comes together, where you have agentic workflows in Bionic, like skills that can invoke functions and can actually invoke smaller models to perform certain tasks, right? That'll require, for example, logistic regression or something of that sort, right? So it's that's the space we're kind of moving into with even agentic workflows, right? Because it's no longer just about retrieval augmented generation. It's no longer just about being able to automate a task that just requires natural language, but in some cases you also require to automate tasks using smaller models, and we let the larger models make the decision when to use the smaller models, right? So
Mhm.
that's how this space is also evolving.
Well, what are some ways that folks can start using Bionic?
Sure. So there are a couple of ways with which users can, or folks can actually start using Bionic. To access Bionic, organizations can reach out to us, can reach out to Quantify directly through our website, or by contacting us via email or phone. We do have a try now option directly available on our website. Baioniq is also available on the Google Marketplace as well as the Snowflake Marketplace. The public trial is something that we released recently. So initial, if anybody is interested, they can simply log in to our website, quantify.com/Baioniq. There's a try now option there. You can subscribe to Baioniq and start reaping the benefits right away.
All right. Very cool. Kanish, this has been really, really interesting. There's lots of information here. It's cool to meet somebody who's been doing this for longer than everybody else in the world.
Thank you so much, John.
I feel
Thank you
like,
once again for
yeah.
having me.
All right. This has been the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next episode.